Norway, home to fjords, northern lights and even more fjords. This is the history of Norway. After millenniums covered in ice, the coast of Norway became ice-free, and the first migrators were nomadic people living of sailing, hunting and fishing along the coast. Farming was eventually introduced, and during the Nordic Bronze Age, the yields increased and trading began. The Celts introduced ironworking, setting the stage for the Iron Age. The social structure also changed. Extended families became clans and conflicts were solved in a thing, a sacred place where men from the surrounding area would gather and determine fitting punishment for crimes. Some farmers became powerful and rose to chieftains. They hired soldiers, creating a hird, enabling them to rule over large areas. Both the Norwegians and their neighbours were proficient shipbuilders and had spent generations upon generations building and using ships. This eventually resulted in the development of the longship. This ship was a master of all trades and set the stage for a new part of both Norwegian and Scandinavian history, the Viking Age. Using the longboats, the Norwegians explored and colonized several islands, likely motivated by the lack of suitable farmland in parts of Norway and the will to explore. During this time, Norway was divided into several small petty kingdoms. Legend has it that one of these kings, Harald Fairhair, unified all of Norway after his marriage prospect, Gyða Eiríksdóttir, challenged him to do so before she would marry him. This marks the beginning of the Kingdom of Norway. The rulers after Harald had to contend with strong regional leaders and Danes, and in the late 10th century the spread of Christianity also became an important political issue. Hailed as king in 995, Olaf Tryggvason quickly proceeded to convert Norway to Christianity, using all means at his disposal. But King Olaf had acquired several enemies during his meteoric rise to power. It climaxed when Olaf got ambushed in the sea battle of Svolder. In this battle, Olaf had 11 ships pitted against more than 70 ships belonging to Denmark, Sweden and the Jarls of Lade. Olaf's ships fell one after one, fighting to the last in his legendary ship the Long Serpent, until he leaped into the ocean to never be seen again. In 1015, Olaf Haraldsson, later known as Saint Olaf, represented the descendants of Harald Fairhair and returned from one of his Viking trips and was immediately elected as King of Norway. He ruled Norway successfully for many years, much due to the Danes being occupied with fighting in England. However, in 1028, the Danish king, Cnut the Great, allied the Jarls of Lade, forcing Olaf into exile. Olaf returned to reclaim his throne, and the last Lade Jarl drowned, but his ambitions was cut short as he was killed in Trøndelag, and the Danes gained control over Norway. The end of Danish overlordship came in 1035 when Magnus the Good returned to Norway and became king of an independent Norway. The half-brother of Saint Olaf, Harald Haråde, had fled after Olaf got killed, but he returned in 1045 bringing large amounts of riches and knowledge gained from serving the Byzantine Emperor. Harald shared his riches with Magnus to become co-ruler, and when Magnus died a few years later, Harald became the sole ruler. During his rule, he founded the city of Oslo, which is the modern-day capital of Norway. Following a claim on the English throne, he invaded England with a fleet of 300 ships. When the Norwegian army travelled towards York, the English army caught them by surprise, and the Norwegians were defeated and Harold was killed in the bloody Battle of Stamford Bridge. The now weakened British army was defeated by William the Conqueror 2 weeks later, forever changing the fate of England. One can only wonder what would have happened if Harald had defeated the British army. Following the end of the Viking Age, Norway saw more focus on the country's own resources. Thousands of farms were established, and the country was quite peaceful. However, in 1030 a period of civil war broke out due to unclear succession laws. After defeating his last internal rival in 1240, Håkon Håkonson introduced clear succession laws and stabilized the country, setting the stage for Norway's golden age. This time saw an extension of Norway's border, a union with Sweden, and the culture and diplomatic ties to the rest of Europe increased. However, this would soon all change. In the summer of 1349, a ship arrived in Bergen, bringing the Black Death to Norway. The pandemic hit Norway hard and killed a third of the population during the first year, and killed several more in the years after. Several farms were left completely desolated, which lowered the price of land, which again made it hard for the landowners, and the state taxation dropped to a minimum. The Hansa established themselves in several Norwegian cities during this period. They distributed dried fish to other parts of Europe, enabling commercial fishing, an industry that still remains strong in modern-day Norway. Between 1369 and 1536, Norway became part of the Kalmar Union, a union joining the kingdoms of Denmark, Sweden and Norway under a single monarch, with Denmark as the de facto leader. Sweden eventually broke free from the union, ending the Kalmar Union. Even though they tried, Norway was too weak to break off from the union with Denmark. Also, when the Reformation spread to Scandinavia, it was implemented on Danish initiative, rendering the Norwegians even weaker as it now lost the church land to the Danish crown. Norway's previously well-functioning state system was almost gone at this point, reducing Norway to Denmark's puppet state. The 17th century saw a boost of the Norwegian mining and timber industries. However, Denmark's many wars with, for example, Sweden led to heavy taxations on Norway. Denmark-Norway was forced into the Napoleonic Wars when the British attacked the Danish fleet. The Danes lost the war and were forced to cede Norway to Sweden in the Treaty of Kiel in 1814. The Norwegians tried to obtain independence, but was forced into a rather loose union with Sweden, where Norway established their own constitution. For many, this marks the beginning of the modern Norwegian state, and the Norwegians celebrate the date this constitution was signed every year. Due to medical advancements, the population rose significantly during the 19th century, leading to a need to modernize the agricultural sector. Still, more than 750,000 Norwegians traveled to the land of opportunity. The union with Sweden ended in 1005 after some cleverness from the Norwegian government, and Norway became an independent kingdom with its own monarch for the first time in 550 years. The following years saw an industrialization boom. Also several social laws were introduced, helping secure the rights of workers. Norway remained neutral during the First World War. During the interwar period, Norway experienced both economic and political hardship, but eventually the Norwegian Labor Party managed to establish a dominant position and introduced many actions to better the Norwegian economy. Norway once again proclaimed neutrality when the Second World War broke out, but Nazi Germany invaded Norway in 1040, and after a few months of fighting, Norway capitulated and remained under German occupation throughout the war. The post-war period was a period of growth and political stability, laying the foundations for a modern welfare state. The discovery of large oil reserves in the late 1960s set the stage for a new industry in Norway, and through well-executed politics, the Norwegian state has been able to benefit greatly from the Norwegian oil industry. The 1970s saw the rise of both environmental and women's rights movements. The economy got deindustrialized and higher education became commonplace. During the 90s, Norway saw increased liberalism, more privatization, and the solidification of a strong and diverse economy. As a result, the 2008 financial crisis almost had no impact on Norway. In 2011, Norway experienced a major terror attack from a lone wolf right-wing extremist, which claimed 77 lives in total. Today, the population of Norway is around 5 million, and Norway is considered the most developed and democratic country in the world. They also have the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. From humble beginnings, towards greatness, and then to downfall and submission, and to greatness again. That was the history of Norway. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, carry on. Or as the Norwegians would say, ja ja.